All right, Shalom. I want to begin by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak, Wadash. Double honors to the head apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to the fellow laborers out there. And as always, you believers. See, I'm back once again through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, which in a nice lesson, and as always, the focal point being Bible prophecy, which pretty much serves as the driving force, if you will, to the ministry itself. And to echo something that we've been bringing out a lot here lately, prophecy is very detailed. It would be considered very intentional, meaning there's nothing random or coincidental about it. This report that have gone forth is directed to Esau, the so-called white man, in relation to the takedown of his kingdom, meaning what is very intentional. It's personalized. It's personal. And this is why when you read the book of Ezekiel, the 35th chapter, the Lord commanded us to what? Set our face against Mount Seir. Matter of fact, let's start off with that real quick. And I know this might sound like a broken record, but guess what? It should. It should sound like a broken record. Remember, the Heavenly Father promised that before he take this place down, he will make inquisition on our behalf. Now, when you go into that word inquisition, it translates to an extensive and prolonged investigation. So when we go over these precepts, it seems as if it's a broken record. We're doing nothing more than dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's, so to speak. That's basically the Most High leaving no stones unturned. Why? So he could cement his case against Esau, the so-called white man. You see? So let's get that real quick, in which when you read the scriptures with understanding, you go into different accounts, it gives you a glimpse into how the Most High, in his approach, if you will, into overthrowing kingdoms, it have that element to it. For an example, when you consider the walls of Jericho, when they came tumbling down in the time of Joshua, well, that account had an element of foreshadowing to it. Remember, they surrounded the walls. Matter of fact, you know what? Let's get that. And we're going to go from there to Ezekiel, the 35th chapter. But before we do again, let me grab this. I want to say that's Joshua, the 6th chapter. I started the 3rd verse, and it reads, "And ye shall compass the city, all ye men of war, and go around about the city once. Thus shall thou do 6 days." So the Lord commanded the men of Joshua to compass the city of Jericho 6 days. The 4th verse reads, and 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of rams' horns, and the 7th day ye shall compass the city 7 times, and which 7 represents what? Completion or perfection. So how does that translate to now? Well, we're in the time of the completion or perfection of the kings of the earth, the nations having dominion in the planet earth, before ultimately the kingdom of heaven is established. See? So we are being the 7th or time of completion. It says, and the priest shall blow with the trumpets. And that's pretty much what the prophets is doing now. We blowing the trumpet. See? Verse 5, and it shall come to pass that when they make a long blast, with the ram's horn, and when ye hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and the people shall ascend up, every man straight before him. Now let's examine this precept. Again, it says, and it shall come to pass that when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, a long blast with the ram's horn. And when ye hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat. And pretty much this is going to happen in America. America is going to fall flat, but it's going to be at the blowing of the trumpet, meaning the prophecy is going forth, which pretty much seals the fate of the so-called white man. Now it says that long blast will be the seventh. It'll be the time when they can pass the city the seventh time, but it will be a long blast. Real quick, let's click on this word long. It's a phrase. The Hebrew word there, mashach. Is to draw, drag, seize, to draw and lift out, drag along. See? So before the walls of Jericho came tumbling down, that last blow of the trumpet was dragged along. It was a long blast. So the Most High put the spirit on the prophets here in the last days concerning Esau's fall, for this last blow of the trumpet to be drawn out. That's why it sounds like a broken record, because the Lord put the spirit on us to go over these prophecies. You see? It says lead along, drag, or lead off. It says the draw, the bow, to proceed, march, to draw out. See? Or give a sound, to draw out, prolong. See that? Prolong. And again, this goes hand in hand with inquisition. When you look up that word inquisition, which again, the Most High said he will make inquisition before he take this place down. That word inquisition translates to what? An extensive or prolonged investigation. So yeah, it's going to sound like a broken record. It's going to seem like we're going over the same precepts, because you got to remember this book was sealed. Now the seals are loosed. And in that, we're really charged to expound on these things. See, prolong, continue, to trail, to chill, draw, attract, to be drawn out. See, to be drawn out, be postponed. See, not saying that the Lord is not going to hasten this destruction, but the ministry again is going to come off as dotting all the I's and crossing the T's, leaving no stones unturned. So it will be no excuses. This word have went out thoroughly. You see? So with that established, now let's go to the book of Ezekiel. The 35th chapter. Starting at the top, and you can see the heading here, prophesy against Mount Seir. And Mount Seir being wherever the so-called white man pitches his tents, but in particular here in the latter days, America, Babylon the Great. This will serve as the throne, if you will, of the so-called white man. And pretty much the target in which the Most High is going to visit. It says, moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir and prophesy against it. See? So that's intentional. It's not up for debate. It's not shrouded in mystery in a sense. It's straight to the point. This is straight command. We're not shying away from who this message is sent to. These death threats is packaged and presented to Mount Seir. Let's click on this word set. Hebrew word there, shawam. It says to put, place, set, appoint. When you appoint something, that's intentional. See? It says to put, set, lay, put or lay upon, lay violent. Oh, lay violent hands on. If you step in the room and it's a gathering and you send out a threat, and if no one is really sure who that threat is geared toward, when you put hands on that particular person, then you know who that threat was sent to. See? Which that really goes into the saying hands on in a sense. See? To set direct toward. See that? Direct toward. So prophecy is intentional. When the Lord overthrew the ancient Egyptians, Moses and Moses and Aaron was set to Pharaoh. See? It says to extend compassion, to set, ordain, establish, found, appoint, constitute, make, determine, fix. To set, station, put, set in place, plant, fix. So, you get the point. Yahweh Shemi Hawashah is pretty much set his sights on the West, and in particular, America, Babylon the Great, which is what? The throne of the so-called white man. Matter of fact, let me grab something else real quick. What's that? The book of Jeremiah. The book of Jeremiah, the 49th chapter. And starting at the 7th verse, and you see the head, and prophesy against who? Edom. See? So prophecy is intentional. This is Jeremiah 48, and starting at verse 7. Concerning Edom, thus said the Lord of hosts, is wisdom no more in Teman? Is counsel perished from the prudent? Is their wisdom vanished? Flee ye, turn back, dwell deep, O inhabitants of Dedan. And what does it mean to dwell deep? That means really to hide yourself. So that's what the so-called white man is doing. He discouraged history. You try to go into certain pressure points of history, then you run into barricades. You have to really go into extensive research, in-depth research, because this man have pretty much distorted information. Why? Because he's hiding his true identity. So that's what it means to dwell deep. See? It says, for I will bring the calamity of Esau upon him the time that I will visit him. See, the time that I will visit him. And again, this is that time. And how do we know that this is the time that the Lord is visiting Edom? Because first and foremost, he's in power, man. And again, just like when you go back to ancient Egypt, Yahweh Shemi Hawashah, he visited Pharaoh before ultimately, releasing his children from that captivity, the children of Israel. And it's no different than today. When you read Romans, the 9th chapter, it gives you a glimpse into that, where Esau is likened to Pharaoh. See? So basically, and as you can see, the title of this lesson, Glad Tidings from the Poor. We here to pretty much expound on that visitation and the fact that the so-called white man is overthrown. He's already taken. If you send somebody into behind enemy lines, and they pretty much send back word that the fortress is broken down, pretty much everything is now compromised. The resources is cut off. That's a good report to the captives, basically. That's good news for us, and it spells bad news for you people. Or what's bad news for you is good news for us. See? So our glad tidings, the glad tidings that we bring forth, is really bad news, in which I got a little information I want to bring forth tonight to show you that the Most High have proceeded forth with the takedown of America. You see, but before we go there, let me get real quick. What's that? The book of Jeremiah. Stand in the book of Jeremiah, the 50th chapter. And starting at the top, and you see the heading again. prophesy against Babylon. This is Jeremiah 51, the word that the Lord spake against Babylon and against the land of the Chaldeans by Jeremiah the prophet. And the land of the Chaldeans is nothing more than saying the land of America, as well as Babylon. And those words is channeled through who? Jeremiah the prophet. So the Lord, he didn't change up that formula. This is why the prophets, again, was set up to pretty much, just like then, now, prophesy against Babylon. Verse 2, it says, declare ye among the nations and publish. Yeah, so this is being made public. This is not some secret cabal, some secret council. No, the Lord have thrust us into the public's eye. You see? Because this is a big deal. When the Lord show forth this work against Babylon, it's going to be etched in infamy, man, if you will. It's going to be considered a great work. And all the nations going to acknowledge Yahweh Hashem Yahushua for that work. Again, it says, declare ye among the nations and publish. And that's what we're doing. It says, and set up a standard, publish, and conceal not. So we're not to conceal this word. And us not concealing the word come with us going out there in the public eye, which that's on display really on YouTube. Matter of fact, let me grab some real quick to support that before we continue. What's that? 1 Corinthians. This is 1 Corinthians, the 4th chapter, in the 9th verse. It says, for I think that the Most High has set forth us, the apostles, last. I think that the Most High have set forth us, the apostles, last. And this last, matter of fact, let's try something. Because again, you're going to see that this word is intentional.
Strong's G 2078, Eschatas. Eschatas.
It says extreme, last in time or in place. Last in time or in place. Last in a series of places. So when you consider ancient kingdoms, well, this would be the last in that series. America, Babylon the Great. So this who the apostles were sent, which when you go into that word apostle, it simply translates to be sent. So that proves that this message is not concocted by the will of man. No, it's inspired by a divine force, which is Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. So we were sent to prophesy against America. It says last in a temporal succession. Last in a temporal succession. So all the different kingdoms and empires and ancient cities prior to America, there was temporal. There was a succession or a series of temporal kingdoms. That's why King Solomon made the statement, all this is vanity. Because the only thing that matters is the kingdom of heaven. That's the only kingdom that will be perpetually established. It says the last referring to time of space, the uttermost part, the end of the earth. That's dealing with America, the far west. It says of rank. Yeah, because everything here is the lowest in rank. From the food that you eat, the air that you breathe, the water that you consume. It says greater worth. Yeah, this is the last and greater worth of everything. So you see where the scriptures is intentional. You don't have to scratch your head. If you don't see it, that means the Most High himself placed a veil over you. He blinded you. But if your eyes are open, you can see that this is dealing with America. And furthermore, the time where the so-called white man would be in power. This man single-handedly destroyed this paradise, which is the planet Earth. See, of rank, grade of worth, last, i.e., lowest. See? So this is when the Lord will raise up the apostles and send them forth. So let's go back here again. 1 Corinthians, the 4th chapter, and the 9th verse. It says, "For I think that the Most High set forth us, the apostles last, as it were appointed to death. For we are made a spectacle, see, for we are made a spectacle unto the world and to angels and to men." Let's click on this word spectacle.
Strong's G 2302. Theatron. Theatron.
Yep. That's where you get the word theater. Or you can see it say a theater, see, a place in which games and dramatic spectacles are exhibited, which when you fast forward to now, that's really the internet, and in particular the YouTube. So the Lord raised up the prophets and the ancient prophets that you read about, if you could receive it, and thrust us into the public's eye. And the apparatus in which this is made possible is the internet. There's no other plausible, you can't come up with nothing else. See, it says, "And public assemblies held," for the Greeks used the theater also as a forum. Look, a public show. So the Lord set us up as a public show. You got a lot of people that's entertained by us. See? From a metaphorical point of view, it says a man who is exhibited to be gazed at and made sport of. And that's why the Lord got us out there on the streets with the garments, missile signs. See? So again, this is the setting. This is the time and the place. So prophecy is very much indeed intentional. See that? So let's go back here again to Ezekiel, the 35th chapter, starting at the 1st verse. "Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir and prophesy." And what are we to prophesy? Well, let's go back to Jeremiah. Bear with me, I know I'm kind of jumping around. Jeremiah, the 50th chapter, and starting at the 1st verse. "The word of the Lord that the Lord spake," Salakia, "the word that the Lord spake against Babylon and against the land of the Chaldeans by Jeremiah the prophet. Declare ye among the nations and publish." See, and we just read in 1 Corinthians, the 4th chapter, where the prophets will be made a gazing stock. So not only will the words be published, but we will be published. See? Because the Lord not going to tiptoe us out the back door, man. He's going to deliver Israel with an emphatic deliverance. And that's why we out there shouting this message, these glad tidings from the rooftop. And that's pursuing, what's that, Matthew, the 10th chapter? "What I tell ye in secret, shout from the housetops." And really the housetop is the internet. It says, "And set up a standard, publish and conceal not. Say, Babylon is taken." So that's the report. That's the glad tidings, man. Babylon is taken, which Babylon is taken. The Lord has officially set in motion the fall of America. And which again, I got a little information that I'm gonna bring forth that prove that visitation is officially set in motion. It says, "Conceal not, say Babylon is taken, Baal is confounded, Merodach is broken in pieces, her idols, Salakia, her idols are confounded." Yeah, and these idols is pretty much anything that serves as pushback against truth is being confounded. See, it says her images are broken in pieces. And really her images as it relates to now is the witchcraft of Esau, and mainly through his television, his programming, predictive programming. Those images are broken. The Lord have broken that stronghold. See? And really that's dealing with the elect. The scripture speaks about how the elect will not be deceived. See? So pretty much, this is the report. Babylon is taken. Her idols are confounded. Her images are broken. See? Verse 3, for out of the north there cometh a nation against her, which shall make her land desolate, and none shall dwell therein. They shall depart, both man and beast. So that's the report. That's what the Lord ordered us to declare and publish among the nations, that America is through. See? And again, that is good news. That's glad tidings. Not for you out there who trust in America, but for those amongst us who desire the world to come. Now, some come to mind real quick before we go to what I got queued up. This is Romans, the 10th chapter. Starting at the 13th verse, it says, for whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Saved from what? The destruction that the Lord had promised. Verse 14, how then shall they call on him whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him on whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And a preacher is a prophet. So in order for you to even believe, the Lord must send forth the prophets. See? Verse 15, and how shall they preach except they be sent? And we just read in 1 Corinthians, the 4th chapter, where the Lord set forth the apostles last, in which that word apostle translates to what? To be sent. See that? So we're under orders and explicit instruction from the Heavenly Father via his word, Yahweh. Again, it says, and how shall they preach except they be sent? So we're not here just speaking according to our own merits. We were sent. We're under orders. The message is inspired by Yahweh Shah. It says, as it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace and bring glad tidings of good things. And bring glad tidings of good things. And what's those glad tidings? What we just read in Jeremiah, the 50th chapter, that America is through. Babylon is taken. Her images are confounded and broken. See? Which brings me to MSN. And it reads, more than 60% of America is covered by drought, and millions of homes are at risk. So this is bad news to you Americans, those of you out there who have made this place your dwelling, your refuge. But guess what? It's good news for us, because it's a token that the Most High have indeed proceeded forth with what he promised. As we read in Jeremiah, the 49th chapter, where he would visit Edom. And that visitation would be through plagues. It says the current drought crisis, right? And that word crisis, get used to saying that word crisis, man. And this is another subtle clue that proves that prophecy is very detailed. This place is, this time that we're in, at the scene of the crime as it relates to Bible prophecy. Matter of fact, let's prove that real quick. And we're going to go back to that article. What's that? 2 Corinthians. Yep. This is our 2 Corinthians, the 6th chapter, and the 2nd verse. It says, for he saith, I have heard thee in a time accepted. So you see what the scriptures deal with time. Time and prophecy is married, is joined at the hip. As it is written, a wise man discern both time and judgment. So to be in the spirit of prophecy is to know what time you in. Again, it says, for he saith, I have heard thee in a time accepted, and in the day of salvation have I secured thee. So we're in the day of salvation. Why would this be considered the day of salvation? Because this is the day of destruction. This is the season of the Lord's wrath. So understanding the duality and overall perfection of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, that balancing act, if you will, if we're in a time of destruction, by default, this will mean it's the time of salvation. So the Lord said, this is the time when I will hear you. Again, it says, and in the day of salvation have I secured thee. Behold, now is the acceptable time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. Now, what I wanted to do real quick is click on this word time. Let's see if this the one. This look like a phrase, but I'm gonna try it. Yep. It says, do measure, a measure of time, a larger or smaller portion of time, which in this case, this would be a smaller portion of time because Esau have but a short time to rule. You see the days are speeding up. So this would be considered a smaller portion of time. The so-called white man's days are hastening. And you can read about that in the book of Wisdom of Solomon, the 2nd chapter, where Esau reasoning with himself, he referred to his time as being in power as that of a shadow. It says, hence, a fixed and definite time. So everything is intentional. See that? See how the scriptures come together? So this is a fixed and definite time. The time of the so-called white man in the season of Esau. It says the time when things are wet, brought to crisis. The time when things are brought to crisis. See that? So this article right here goes hand in hand with biblical prophecy. It says the current drought crisis, see, this is the time we're in, the time where that word crisis will be thrown around. So if you have the mental capacity, the wherewithal to connect the dots, then you are fully persuaded at this point. You understand of certainty the time and season that you're in. It says the current drought crisis in the U.S. is poised to take an enormous toll on homeowners. More than 60% of the country is facing drought conditions, just 2% points shy of the most widespread drought this century, man. So we're in a time where the Most High is working. He's reviving his work in the midst of the years. It says, which occurred in 2012, according to the Washington Post. So this would be considered monumental times. Emphatic, you see? In which we brought this out, I believe, last week. I believe it was me and the brother Barack, concerning there's a city, Corpus Christi, Texas. They're officially declared as out of water, man. See? So that's your how about Shemahawashah visiting Egypt as he did before. Because when you go back in the records, the Lord pretty much sent a drought in Egypt. It says senior meteorologists and long-range forecasters said the states most affected include Colorado, Utah, Georgia, Florida, and southern Texas, which I just mentioned that concerning Corpus Christi. It says the southeast region from Virginia to Alabama is near 100% and normally dry or greater currently. This region is nearly 50% in extreme drought conditions. He explained across Texas, the worst of the drought is from northeast Texas to the lower valley. The state is 21 to 23% in extreme drought. Northwest Colorado to eastern Utah is the worst area for drought in the west, ranging from severe to exceptional drought. Come on, man. I thought severe was the highest. See that? just like the other catastrophic. See, these are the words that's being thrown around as it relates to the diagnosis of America, man. Whether events, drought conditions can have an enormous impact on property value and maintenance expenses, and homeowners need to be prepared. So you see here, this is the chart. Basically, what you're witnessing is a blockade and siege, where the Most High is invading America, Babylon the Great, as promised. Look at that. First the drought, then the wildfires. Remember, Yahweh Shah spoke about this. What if this place be already kindled? And you had wildfires throughout Florida, Georgia. See? So that's the time we're in. So from there, which I got a series of articles, we're going to kind of run through them. This is from Independent. It says experts warn world food system could collapse without urgent action. And there's nothing you could do to withstand Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shah, because it's already written. It says the world's food system is fracturing under the weight of diversity law to the ecosystem being thrown off, because biodiversity is really everything working in sequence. See, all of the wolves, the insects who thrive off the grass, that kill them off, and it's like a chain effect. It says climate shocks and escalating geopolitical conflicts, experts have warned. So it's like a domino effect. When you affect one element, then it affects everything else. It said the chronic pressures on the intricate global network pose a significant threat to the world economy, society, and even human survival, according to a new report spearheaded by Angela Ruskin. It says in the Institute and faculty, let me see what he got here. Degradation and water scarcity. Yep, that word scarcity that goes into what? Shortage of supplies have already resulted in diminished crop yields, elevated prices, and reduced availability in recent years. Another token, this is another sign that Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shah has indeed proceeded forth with the takedown of the so-called white man. And guess what? That's good news for us. Although it's technically bad news, but you know what? We're not of this world. The scriptures say, this is the book of wait a second. Yep, this is second Ezra 14, starting at the 13th verse. It says, now therefore set thine house in order. And that's what you're witnessing with the ministry. This is the house of David being set in order, being erected. Right now, the house of David is under construction, which that word construction, it translates to with structure. That word con, meaning with, instruction going back to structure. So the house of David is under construction, being erected, while simultaneously the house of Esau is being destroyed, which goes back to destruct. D meaning take away or take, and structure going back to structure. So the Lord is taking away the structure of Esau, and again, simultaneously, he's building us up. Again, it says, now therefore set thine house in order and reprove thy people. That's why you see with the ministry, we get on Jake. And we reprove ourselves. And basically this thing is about adjustments and being prepared and adorned to be made ready for the return of Yahweh Shai. It says, comfort such of them as be in trouble, and now renounce corruption. So when we teach this word, when we speak on behalf of the coming kingdom of our Lord Yahweh Shai, that comes with us denouncing this present world, governed over by Esau, the so-called white man, which would be considered what? Glad tidings. See? Verse 14, let go from thee mortal thoughts, which mortal thoughts is what? The flesh. Cast away the burdens of man, put off now the weak nature, as it is written, the flesh is weak and the spirit is willing. So the key word there really is thoughts. See, this is how Yahweh Hashem Shai chose to bring us back into his good graces. It would be through what? Reforming your mind. And that feat would be accomplished through a doctrine that would be brought forth. In this setting, if you will, where the scriptures is taught thoroughly, which that in itself, it reform your thoughts. Verse 15, it says, and set aside the thoughts. See? So whatever you subscribe to prior to this information that we have been exposed to, you got to set that aside. It says, and set aside the thoughts that are most heavy unto thee, and haste thee to flee from these times. Haste thee to flee from these times. And these times will be monumental, beautiful times, yet dangerous. And the fact that this is the time where the Most High is set to open up on the inhabitants of the planet Earth. But you notice only those who are operating the spirit will have that outlet. Because again, you people, you're basically acclimated to this system. It has proven to be your be-all, end-all. So these reports that's going forth is bad news for you. But it's glad tidings to the believers. Verse 16, for yet greater evils than those which thou have seen happen shall be done hereafter. So basically, it's going to get worse and worse. Verse 17, for look how much the world shall become weaker through age, meaning the age of Esau. Because different kingdoms and empires is likened to ages and generations. So you see how weaker the world have become under this man's watch? You got droughts, famines, scarcity of harvest, shortages. It says, so much the more shall evils increase, see, upon them that dwell therein. So you have certain of us who are pilgrims. See that? Our mind is on the kingdom versus others who dwell here. And that's pretty much the bad news falling upon them. This bad news is good news to us. Matter of fact, you know what? Let me see if I can get that. I want to say that's Psalms 112. This is the book of Psalms, chapter 112. I started the fifth verse. It says, a good man showeth favor and lendeth. And that's really dealing with this truth. Extending his word, that's showing favor and lending. See? He will guide his affairs with discretion. That word discretion has everything to do with wisdom, the cognitives of wisdom and discernment. You're going to see that as we read on. It says, surely he shall not be moved forever, for the righteous shall be in everlasting remembrance. He shall not be afraid of evil tidings. See, he shall not be afraid of evil tidings. So these reports that's going forth, which is bleak and disturbing, man, as we touch on the plagues, the sad perils. Well, again, that's bad news for those who dwell within the land. But for those of us who have our sights set on the world to come and hasten to flee from these times, those evil tidings is going to be good news to us. Again, it says, he shall not be afraid of evil tidings. See, his heart is fixed, trusting in the Lord, meaning what? Trusting in the report. And your heart being fixed means you're established. Verse 8, it says, his heart is established. See, he shall not be afraid until he see his desire upon his enemies. And what's that? The destruction of America. See? So let's go back here to this article. And we almost done. I think I got a couple of more articles. It says the precarious situation is now being exasperated by geopolitical instability with the U.S.-Israeli war. And that's another word keep jumping up, man. Proving that this is the time of Esau, the so-called white man. Remember, he was given a sword to sustain him. So through his sword, he's fulfilling prophecy, man. So this war is taking a toll on you Americans. You're going to feel the brunt. You're going to serve as collateral damage. It says, with the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran cited as a further example exposing the fragility of food security as supply chain disruptions continue to drive up costs. So, yeah, these are the times we're in. So now let me see what else we got here. Two-thirds of Americans say country is headed in the wrong direction. And again, this is glad tidings, man. Two-thirds, and it's heavy. Destruction as it relates to the salvation of the elect. The 1/3 is that number that's to be delivered, leaving the 2/3 left for destruction. So this is all spiritual. 2/3 of Americans say country, Salakia, is headed in the wrong direction. Let me see if it's a little read in this. It says, as the Iran war have pushed the global economy into an oil crisis, see, those words keep jumping out, right? Crisis, war. That proves that prophecy is intentional, it's direct, and geared towards a particular time, which is now. It says, and gas prices reach a 4-year high. Americans' ratings of President Donald Trump on several issues are deeply underwater, with majority disapproving of how he is handling every issue measured according to a poll. So you got these Americans voicing their displeasure for the leaders of this nation. It's got Trump. It says despite strongly negative headwinds for Trump and his party, Democrats are leading the midterm elections at this point. Trump's approval rating has dipped to 37%, the lowest of his presidential term, and 62% disapproval rating is a record high over both presidential terms. So, I mean, that's all we need. Pretty much the headline says it all. You can see the pulse here in America. 2/3 of Americans say country is headed in the wrong direction. That's good news for us. See? Pretty much America is in a sharp decline. Matter of fact, Jeremiah 51st chapter. Around the 25th verse. Yep. This is Jeremiah chapter 51 and verse 25. Behold, I am against thee, O destroying mountain. And it's dealing with Esau overall. And that mountain personified as America. Behold, I am against thee, O destroying mountain, saith the Lord. Yeah, because from America pretty much emanates all the wickedness that you see here in the planet Earth. America serves as the springboard, which has prepared wickedness throughout the world. So this is that destroying mountain. See, it said, which destroyeth all the earth. See, and I will stretch out mine hand upon thee and roll thee down from the rocks and will make thee a burnt mountain. See, and roll thee down from the rocks and will make thee a burnt mountain, which pretty much complements the sentiment of these Americans right here. You see in this article, 2/3 of Americans say country is headed in the wrong direction. That's the Lord rolling you down from the rocks. You see, you're trending downward. And it's not going to just fizzle out there. As we just read, it said he's going to roll you down from the mountains and he's going to make you a burnt mountain. Let's go back there. Again, it says, behold, I am against thee, O destroying mountain, saith the Lord, which destroyeth all the earth. And I will stretch out mine hand upon thee and roll thee down from the rocks. Yeah, you're going to trend downward. It's going to be a decline. And will make thee a burnt mountain. That's your landing spot, destruction, which will manifest in the form of World War III. Which brings me to the last article I got here. It says Russia issues nuclear apocalypse threat as World War III risk grows. So, again, the Bible reigns supreme. As we prophesy these things, as we sing this song and you believe us, vibe to it, you see where it's actually taking shape and taking form in the earth. We've been prophesying about World War III, beginning with the apostles. And when they first came on the internet in the summer of 2007, even to this very moment. And you see where it's growing, right? And you see where the scriptures is heavy, man. The word is likened to a seed. And when you consider a seed, it starts off hidden, of course, but eventually it grows. It reveals itself and you see it. And the more that seed, right? Somebody hand you a seed, unless they tell you that it's a orange tree seed, you're not going to see it until it actually grows. See that? So now we're in a time where World War III is up close and personal. Again, Russia issues nuclear apocalypse threat as World War III risk grows. See if it's a little read in here. It says Mel David warns that World War III is on the verge of happening. Russian ex-president Dmitry Medvedev has warned of a real possibility of a nuclear apocalypse, as he cautioned that Russia is on a collision course with the UK and the rest of Europe. In a chilling address to Russian school children, the close Putin ally declared our conflict with the Western world today is essential in nature. Let me see. It says, it says, pardon me, I barely could see right here. It says, exists central. Exist existential. That is, let me see something. It says that is a question of existence, he said. I'm often accused of using harsh rhetoric and talking about nuclear apocalypse. It says, but unfortunately, it's a real possibility. Anyone who doesn't realize that this is either a dreamer or a fool. Let's read this again. It says, but unfortunately, this is a real possibility. Anyone who doesn't realize this is either a dreamer or a fool. That's heavy, man, because it's obvious. See? The counsel of the Lord stand, as it is written and spoken, so shall it be. It says, but I really don't want that to happen. It don't matter what you want. It's the intents and purposes of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua for a global war to take place in an effort to overthrow America and other parts of the world. But really, America, that's the focal point. It says, God forbid, of course, that we witness such events, but they cannot be ruled out. You damn right, because that's the temperature on the planet Earth. The pulse on the planet Earth is that of war. And you can read about that in Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter. It says, and we must prepare for them. This is precisely why we have triad of strategy nuclear forces in our country. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. We ain't got to read too much more into this. Right? You see the point? Russia issues nuclear apocalypse threat as World War III grows. So this is the pulse on the planet Earth. The temperature on the planet Earth is that of war. See, and all the different articles we went into, which that's nothing more than scratching the surface, a blimp on the radar. It's a whole lot going on in the Earth that serves as an indicator that the so-called white man is in a sharp decline. He can't turn back that momentum. We read that in Jeremiah the 49th chapter. This is the time where the Most High will visit him. And this is the report we have been given. And we really should rejoice in this. See? Matter of fact, in closing, get that in the book of Psalms. Psalms, I think that's chapter, is it? Yep, Psalms 107. And I start at the 41st verse. It says, yet saith he the poor on high from affliction. And that's what we're witnessing now. This is officially set in motion. The Lord is now raising us up. He's raising up the poor. And that affliction represents what? Being oppressed, being in captivity under our enemies. You see, it says, and maketh him families like a flock. The righteous shall see it. See, the righteous shall see it and rejoice. See what? That transition. Because as we are being raised up, so-called white man is being brought low. And this is what we see. Matter of fact, let me grab something real quick and we're going to come back. That's in the book of Sirach, the 25th chapter. This is Sirach, chapter 25. In verse 7, it says, there be 9 things which I have judged in mine heart to be happy, and the 10th I will utter with my tongue. A man that have joy of his children, and he that liveth to see the fall of his enemies. See? And he that liveth to see the fall of his enemies. So when you go back here again, see, that's the luxury that we have. We're witnessing the Lord's favor, where he's raising up the poor and simultaneously bringing down the high and lofty. It says, the righteous shall see it and rejoice, and all iniquity shall stop her mouth. You see where you have that contrast? That iniquity is pretty much manifest through Esau, the so-called white man. Verse 43, whoso is wise and will observe these things, see, whoso is wise and will observe these things, even they shall understand the love and kindness of the Lord. So if you can see it, if you can see what's taking place here on the planet Earth, then that means that what? You understand the love and kindness of the Lord. And what's the love and kindness of Yahweh Shai? Pretty much this truth, man. That's what we understand. See? And understanding this truth is what sets off chronological events, which peaks with what? Your hope. See, the world, they don't have this hope that we have been given, but it's developed by what? Coming into this arena and being taught, the intense purposes and overall plans of Yahweh Shai. Just as Noah, remember the scriptures tell you how Noah, being warned of the Most High, built an ark for the saving of his household. See? So Tawadi Yahweh Shai, he allowed us to pretty much continue in that legacy. So yeah, with that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak Kodash. Double honors to the head apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to the fellow laborers out there, and as always, you believers. To the next time, shalom.